We are on 71b at the very bottom, last line. So the last thing the Mishnah said, Hamadir Asishto, that if a man makes a vow about his wife, and as we saw the other day, that means it's not that he has the power to enforce a vow on her, but he's saying, like, I'm not going to support you unless you comply with this vow. And the vow is you can't go out to a shiva or to a party, which I think might mean a wedding. So bishlama based on Mishnah ikanoa b'faneh. So I understand why we don't allow him to impose a vow on her about going to parties or weddings, because that would be like locking her in, right? Which he's not allowed to do. You can't lock your wife away. So by saying you can't go to parties, to social events, that we don't allow that. But going to a shiva house is not a social thing, right? There's a purpose there. So you don't party with people at a shiva house, obviously, right? It's not a place for idle conversation or meeting people. It has a specific purpose. So what's the big deal? Why wouldn't we allow the husband to impose that on her? Our answer is Tana. We have the brisa, Lamachar Himesa, because you know what? One day you're going to die, or she will die. If you don't go to somebody else's shiva, they're not going to come to your shiva.
That's
right?
very true.
So that's right. So there is a social aspect. In other words, it affects her social standing and her well-being, even though it's not a place for conversation, but it's part of part of society, right? Is to participate in these events that are important to other people, to your friends. Vikadam, right? Or some say, so one version is nobody will eulogize her, and some say it's softa, no one will come to bury her. But the same idea, like people won't. She'll feel like she's not part of the society, and nobody's going to. If I don't go to participate in other people's tragedies and consolation, nobody will come for me. Tanya. We have another brisa. Mary same. I receive tov l'lechos al beis evel l'lechos al beis hamishta. Well-known verse in Kohelet. It's better to go to a house of mourning than to a house to a party. Ba'asher hu sof kol adam v'chayitin libo, because the house of mourning is the end of every person, and the living should take it to heart. My v'chayitin libo. What does it mean? The living should take it to heart. Devarim shel misa. You should focus when you go to a shiva. You should focus on your own impending demise. Desafa yispedune. When is it that you take to heart about the mourning? That now you are giving the hesped. You are giving the eulogy. One day somebody will be giving the eulogy for you to cover Yikburune. You're burying somebody else now, but one day someone else is going to bury you. The Adal Yidlune. And the wailing, you're wailing for somebody else now. One day that someone will wail for you. The cemetery procession, the same idea. The Tanya, you're carrying somebody else's coffin. One day somebody's going to carry yours. So that's what you should pay attention to at a house of mourning. And that's the same idea, right? That we all participate in each other's lives and important events because we will all have the same. Now we saw in the Mishnah, if the husband says this is really about something else, but the Mishnah didn't say what is something else, right? This vow going to parties and funerals. Rashai, then he's permitted. What does that mean? My davar acher. Amar Rav Yehuda said, Mishum b'nei Adam perutzin shemishuyin sham. Like, you know what? I know who's going to these parties. I know who's going to this shiva. These are disreputable people, and I don't want you to attend because of promiscuous behavior there. Okay, like at parties, I can certainly understand that. At a shiva, I don't know how to explain that. I can't really see untoward, flirting going on at shivas, but be that as it may. Amar Rashi said, "Lo amran lo elad li'yischazek," and that he can only do if it's established that these parties are are attended by disreputable people. But you can't just make it up. We can't just say, you know what, I want you going to parties. Who knows who could be there, right? That's not valid. But to say, you know, I know who's going to be at this party and I don't want you going there because of that, that's valid. Mishnah said that, you know, I'm allowing you to do whatever on condition that you tell my secrets or tell me someone else's secrets, right? Then he has to divorce her. V'tema, so why doesn't she just tell? You know, what's the like Amar Shmuel Dover Shel Kala. It's talking about embarrassing things, okay? So in other words, it's not just idle conversation or messages, it's like gossip, right? Malicious gossip. That's what we're talking about. The last thing the Mishnah says was on condition that you empty the garbage, right? So, you know, what's wrong with that? Take out the garbage. He doesn't want to take out the garbage. He wants you to take out the garbage. It's a metaphor. We're not really talking about the garbage here. We're talking about the garbage is his semen. Okay, it's like don't empty out, like don't try to avoid getting pregnant. Okay, don't try to dump my semen. That's what he really means. And so if she's that you know, that is within his rights. It's like, you know, I want to have a family. You know, we'll leave aside the issue as we have in general with this whole Mishnah of what about, you know, the woman's part in this, but okay. And Mishnah has a different thing about emptying the garbage, means something else. It's like busy work. It's like, you know, go fill up 10 pitchers of water from the well and then pour it out into the garbage. Like that's just, you know,
keep you busy.
Yeah. Shmuel. So so I understand Shmuel's answer that it's a euphemism for contraception. So okay, I understand. You have to divorce her and pay her ksuba because you can't force your wife to have children. But the other opinion, like, you know, so what? So he wants her to fill up pitchers of water and pour them out. So let her do it. There's nothing intrinsically, you know, well, I mean, you know, I definitely see the point, right? If you're just, it's abusive, right? To tell someone to do that. But Rabbi answers as follows: Nation nearest Kashota. I guess similar thing. She makes her look like an idiot, right? Like you know, out of her mind. Amrav Kana. Rav Kana has a new thing. He makes a vow that requires his wife not to borrow anything or not to lend anything. Nafo kvara, or to use specifically like a fine sieve, or to use specifically a coarse sieve. For echaim tanur, or, you know, use a mill or an oven. Yotzivi ksuba. These are not appropriate. He has to divorce her and give her the ksuba. Shemasiya shem rab b'shchenoseh, because you're giving her a bad name, bad reputation. Like, yeah, so and so won't lend to me. You know, that's nothing good will come of that, right? Or so and so is too good to borrow from me. Nothing good will come of that either. Tell you, we have a corresponding, a similar thing. Braisa Hamadiris Ishta Shlotisha Shotashil. A person makes a vow regarding his wife that she can't lend or borrow. Nafo Kavara, a fine sieve or a coarse sieve or a chaim tanur mill or an oven. Yosef thinks he has to divorce her and give her a ksuba. And here the Braisa is specific about why. Because you give her a bad rep. And now, what if the wife makes a vow not to borrow or lend, or not to, you know, sew nice clothes for his children? Then that's her bad. You know, he can divorce her and he doesn't have to give her a ksuba because she's being unreasonable. Because she's making him look bad. Right? Like so-and-so's wife, you know, is stuck up. So-and-so's children are going around without nice clothes. Okay. Next Mishnah. Here are other cases where a wife gets divorced and she can't collect her ksuba. However, soldas Moshe b'Yehudis. A woman who doesn't keep the law of Moses and or Jewish law or Jewish practice. What does it mean the law of Moses? Machilaso she'eino musa. For example, if she feeds him food that maser, the tithe wasn't taken from it, or she doesn't go to the mikvah, she has sex with him while she is in nida without telling him. Or she bakes bread and she doesn't separate challah, which is the portion supposed to be given to the kohen. Or she makes vows and she doesn't keep them. These are all this is all called Das Moshe, the law of Moses. What is Jewish law? Jewish practice, maybe we'll call it. Yosef Rosh Perua. You go out with your head. She goes out with her head uncovered. So that's not a law. That's not a law in the Torah, though the Gemara will discuss if that's the case. But it's still Jewish practice, so she's expected to conform. Vatova bashuk, or she spins her whatever garments or cloths in the marketplace. We'll see what the problem is in that tomorrow. Or she just speaks to any random person and any random man, which is also the Gemara will explain, but I expect it will be having to do with flirting with other, with bringing suspicion upon herself that she is not as faithful to her husband as she should be. Abishol says, Afam kalelas yolda b'fanav. A woman who curses her in-laws, right? Curses her husband's parents in his presence. She can be divorced without a ksuba. Tarfanomer afa kolanis, a woman who's too noisy. Eza kolanis, what does that mean? You talk in your house and your neighbors can hear you. Now, I'm sure there are where you would have to whisper if you don't want your neighbors to hear you, but I think you get the idea. It's like she's too loud for her circumstances, and people can overhear her, and so that's also a divorceable offense, as it were. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to take apart all of these items. Feeding him. These are first the things that are Das Moshe, Mosaic law. Feeding him food that she did not take tithe from. Hechadame. What are we talking about? Idiada. If the husband knows about it, nifrosh. So what's he doing eating it? She serves you something that's not kosher. She puts a cheeseburger in front of you. Don't eat the cheeseburger, right? Eat loyada. So maybe he didn't know because you can't tell by looking at it. So maybe he didn't know. Nayada. So how does he know now? How does it come to light that he says, "Oh, you gave me food without maser," right? How does he know that? So we understand it as follows. When she says, "You know what? So and so the Kohen, he gave me this produce," meaning he took maser from it, truma in this case. And then he goes to Jack Cohen and says, "Hey, my wife said you gave her, you gave her food that you had already taken maser from." And he's like, "No, I didn't." So he can find out afterwards because she was specific. Basically, he checked up on her. So there is a way he can check up on it. Okay. Now, what about having sex with him without while she is in nida? Same question. If he knows this is the case, nifrosh. So what's he doing having sex with her? And if he didn't know, then how can you check up on that, right? If she claims, if she claimed at the time that she was not a nida and they were permitted to sleep together, presumably she's maintaining that. So how does he know that it's not true? Rav Chanina and Rav Chanina says to support this, how do you know that you can rely on a woman to count, her own the days since her last period and when she can go to the mikvah? Because when the Torah discusses, it says she should count 7 days, count for herself. She's the one responsible for counting. There's no supervision required, right? So she says, "Oh, you know what? I had, there are all these cases where a question comes up, right? Where a woman's not sure if she's bleeding or some other kind of some other fluid or some other kind of discharge. And so she says, you know what? I had a discharge the other day. I took it to the rabbi, and the rabbi said it's fine. I'm not a nida, and we can have sex. And then Biazal Shaila Bishtan Shikwa, he goes to the rabbi and says, I haven't seen your wife in 3 months. So that's how he discovers it was not true, and that's how he knows to divorce her without a ksuba. Or we could say like Rabbi Yehuda, if like her neighbors notice that she is a nida, what does that mean? Like there may have been a custom to wear certain clothes, right, or to behave in a certain way, right, not to go out. So if the neighborhood knows, he should keep his ear to the ground. That she tells him, I'm not a nida, and then the next day her neighbors behave as if she were. That's how he knows. Okay, the next thing was lo kotzel challah. She gives him bread, bakes him bread, and didn't take challah from it to give to the kohen. Hechidami, same question. If he knew about it, nifrash, don't eat it. If he didn't know about it at the time, how does he find out about it after? When she says, you know what, I bought pizza dough today in the store, and the storekeeper said to me he had already taken challah. And then that day he goes to the store and he says, hey, did you tell this to my wife? And he says, no, I gave her dough that wasn't separated, and I told her so. So she was responsible. And then so that's how he finds out that she tricked him. What about making a vow and not fulfilling it? Why is that a thing? Why is that bad? Why does she forfeit her ketubah? Because, as we said, for the sin of not fulfilling your vow, your children could die. Don't let your mouth cause your flesh to sin. What does it mean? And it continues. I don't have the verse in front of me, but why should you let God, destroy the work of your hands by doing this? So, one of the work of your hands, that's your children. So, implying that if you don't keep your vows, your children are at risk. Rav Nachman has a different source. I've struck your children for no good reason. Meaning, what does it mean for no reason or for nothing? For nothing, for not fulfilling what you said. Okay. If you know about your wife that she vows things and she doesn't fulfill them, you should make a vow that forbids her. So yad yirena, what do you mean? You can't make a vow for somebody else, but my mitakin-la. So how can he fix this? Not if rereading it, Rameir didn't say you should go and affirm her vow. It's a different word, yakni tena. You should provoke her, because they should hear so that she could make the same vow, right? Like in while she's angry, and then you can annul it, right? Then because the husband who hears his wife, who finds out his wife making a vow, on the same day he can annul it. So if he, I guess the first vow would supersede the original vow. The second vow would supersede the original vow, and then because he's hearing it right now, he can annul it. Amrullah, they said to him, "Ein adam darim lachash b'kfifa." You can't live with a snake in your basket. In other words, sure, you can fix this particular vow problem, but you've now discovered that she's a person who vows and doesn't keep her vows. So fine, you escaped the snake today, but the snake is still living in your house. Oh. So go ahead and
deal with it, right?
Yeah. Tanya, Yehuda used to say, if you know about your wife that she doesn't take challah from her bread, from the dough, so you take the challah. She gives you a loaf of bread, take off a piece and dedicate that to challah as the Kohen's portion. So he's suggesting that you have a way around it. Like you don't have to get divorced because one time your wife didn't take challah. And same thing. Like you can't live with somebody who you don't trust. So if you're saying this about challah, you would certainly say this about vows. If you say it about vows, you might not say the same about the woman not separating challah. You might agree that since, vows, maybe it was a one-time thing, but bread you have every day, right? So, you can't trust somebody who didn't give you challah because you know that they're giving you bread every day. You're at risk every day. Whereas with the vows, maybe you could say it was a one-time thing. So those are all the Mosaic laws mentioned in the Mishnah. What is Jewish practice? Going out with your hair uncovered. Rosh Hashanah says that's a biblical prohibition, which is unclear, by the way, if that's the case. The Rishonim discuss it. But when a woman is a sota, when she's suspected of adultery, and there's this whole ritual in the temple to clarify her status, so part of the ceremony, part of the ritual is to uncover her head. Vatana Devei Rabbi Shmuel is taught in the house Rabbi Shmuel. That implies that her hair was covered, right? So this kind of implies that women have to have their head covered. So the answer is right. Kalasa Shakradame. Biblically, there's a minimum requirement, you could say, to cover your hair, but Das Yehudi Safil Kalasa Nami Aser. You could, the Jewish practice is to have a more complete covering. Okay, so that gets around that problem. I don't feel qualified to discuss this. There's probably lots and lots of discussion about this because, as you know, some people have this practice and some do not, and it's only for married women and not single women. Although that you can apply from the sota thing that only applies to married women. And what is a sufficient covering? What type of covering? There's a whole, you could
about that right.
for a long time. And I don't know enough about it to do so. I'm Ravasi, I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Ravasi, you said, Kalasa imba mishum peru arash. If you have the minimum head covering, then that's fine. Havibar Rav Zera discussed, hey, what are we talking about? Elam Bashuk, we're talking about in the marketplace and public areas. Das Yehudis, we just saw in the Mishnah that Jewish practice is to have a more significant cover. If you're talking about in your own backyard, in Cain, so like if you're supposed to cover your hair elaborately, even when you're at home, then like that's ridiculous.
It's interesting, Dov. In my son's neighborhood in Brooklyn, Ocean Parkway, Avenue M, very religious community.
Yeah.
And is very religious Jews, Orthodox Jews. The women wear such beautiful wigs. I mean, the wigs cost $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. And anyway, you know what I mean. What I mean.
And, there are Hasidic communities where that's considered, as bad or worse than your own hair.
Right. Anyway, like you, I'm not qualified to discuss that.
Yeah. Abaye says, what are we talking about? So he's asking, like, are we talking about in the marketplace? She has to cover her hair. We're talking about at home. She doesn't have to cover her hair. She's talking about, like, if you're going from yard to yard, like in your neighborhood, going through the back alley or something. So, you're not required to get all covered up, but still somewhat. Okay, but Tova Bashuk, spinning in the marketplace. What's wrong with that? Amar Rabbi Shmuel, B'mara is Rosel Livnei Adam, because when you're spinning, you're moving your arms around, right? Even if you have long sleeves, because of the way because of the motions you have to make in spinning, you're going to expose yourself. So that is Jewish practice not to do that. You should do your spinning at home in private. Rav Chiza says another option, B'tova v'rad b'keneged panea. I have never seen anybody spinning, but I guess the idea is that you part your legs and the material or whatever the wheel's in front of you and it drops down between your legs, and so you have to spread your legs a little, and you risk exposing yourself. So therefore, Jewish practice is not to do that in public. I'm speaking with any man. We're talking about, you hang around with the young men, you're flirting, basically. And that's not appropriate for Jewish practice. Amar Rabba Baruch Chana. Rabbi Baruch Chana says, "Zim Nachada, one time, Havakazilna Basri Rav Ukva was walking behind Rav Ukva. Hazisi Arvia Dehavayasva, and I saw there was this Arab woman sitting there. Kashadya Pilka Vitova. She was doing her spinning. Varad Keneged Panah. And this happened that her legs were parted. Kevan de Chazisina. When she saw us, Pisikte Lefilka Shadise. She broke the spindle off the thread and threw it down on the road. Amarli, she said to me, Ulaim Havli Pelech. She said, young man, give me the spindle. So she's kind of flirting with him. Amarabba Ravukva Milsa. And Rav Ukva, criticized her, right? So again, this is just my Amar. How did he criticize her? Ravina Amar Tova Bashuk Amarba. He says, "Oh, you're a market spinner, right? A public spinner." In other words, he said something about her to her detriment. The rabbi said, he says, "Oh, she threw her spindle down just to be able to strike up a conversation with me and flirt with me." So what he called her was a flirt, not a spinner, a public spinner. Okay, both of these things are contrary to what the Mishnah calls Jewish practice. A woman who curses her in-laws is worthy of divorce without a ksuba. It also, if you criticize your children in front of your in-laws, their grandchildren, it's also the same thing. When Jacob blesses Joseph's children, Ephraim and Manasseh, he says, Ephraim and Manasseh, my grandchildren will be like my children, like Reuven and Shimon. Right, he included them in his bracha and his inheritance. So this is a hint that criticize my grandchild is the same as criticizing my child. Amar Rabba the Amrale Nechle Aryeh Lasaba. What's an example of cursing your in-laws? What you say to the grandchild, I hope a lion eats your grandfather, your father's father, right? Bape Bray, and doing that in front of his son, in front of your husband. Rav Tarfon Omer, Afakolais. The Mishnah said that a noisy woman can be divorced without a ksuba. My kolais, what does that mean? It means she's noisy during sex. And so what's wrong with that? I mean, it's I guess it's embarrassing for him. In the Brisa, it was taught. Oh no, sorry. This is the one where she's noisy during sex. The first one is, she has loud arguments with you about sex. Okay. So if we'll see the next Mishnah or future Mishnah talks about if you can divorce your wife because she has some kind of a disability or a blemish, right? So that sounds like this sounds like I'm not sure why the okay, so Rashi says, why is she so noisy during sex? Because it's painful for her. Okay, well, in that case, that's like having a disability, right? So we should list this among the things that are disabilities, not among the things that are misbehavior, right? Okay, so we must be talking about arguing about sex, right? That's a temperament thing. That's not a physical thing. And so that is worthy. So I would like to finish a little early today. And since we got to this mission, I think we'll knock it off here. And tomorrow's daf is pretty short, so hopefully David will forgive me, and we'll knock it off here.
Thank you, Joe. Have a good Shabbos to you.
Good Shabbos.